Okay, this week I'm really happy to welcome to our podcast former American tennis player, former Fed Cup member of Team USA, top 40 presence on the WTA Tour at the age of 18, and then retired from professional competition by the age of 25. So we'll talk about all of that and a lot more this week with our guest, Ashley Harkleroad. Thank you, Ashley, so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
We got to start with COVID-19 and the isolation everyone's going through. And I've got to say, I'm kind of jealous of the setup that you guys have in your home because you're making it look like a lot more fun than I think it is for many of us. But how are you guys doing through 10 or 11 weeks of this right now, where you're set up in California?
We are very lucky because, thankfully we can swim, and we have a little, basketball hoop in the front part of our house. So, and we're riding our bikes a lot. We bought 4 brand new mountain bikes. And at the beginning of this, my daughter couldn't even ride a bike, and now she's mountain biking everywhere. So we have definitely been staying active, and thankfully we live in Southern California, which the weather's for the most part pretty amazing every day. So we've definitely been staying active, and we've just learning new things. I mean, I've never cooked so much, I've never baked so much, I've never ate so much.
You and me both.
But we're also staying active. So I think that's the good part. The only kind of frustrating thing for me as a mom is, my kids are home every day and there's no school, and it's not looking like there's going to be school until 2021, quite honestly.
Right.
So, we're in a good routine right now. I'm pretty excited for like summer to start, I guess, in terms of like them not having to wake up and be on a Zoom schedule all the time. Me having to keep up with all the Zooms with their teachers and classmates and art class and music and all that. That's a little, that can be a little overwhelming. But for the most part, we're doing pretty well. I think the most important thing is we're staying healthy.
Yeah, first and foremost, I can relate to you on a lot of what you said because I'm home with my 3 kids and the Zoom chats and the school work and trying to get a routine with them as well. And for us, at least up here in Canada, the weather's just started getting better the last 2 weeks. In fact, oddly enough, about 2.5 weeks ago, we had like a snowstorm here in Toronto, like a freak snowstorm in May,
Oh, wow.
which is very random for us, but definitely better now. And I got to remember to get on the sunscreen because as I'm looking at myself here on the screen, I can see the last couple of days. Prior to all this, maybe you can fill us in a little bit and our listeners who aren't as familiar with what you've been doing since retirement, but what's been keeping you busy since you left professional tennis about 10 years ago?
Well, at the beginning, when I kind of first left the game, I was still sort of in the game. I was doing some commentating, and I was playing some exos around the world. I was playing exos with Hingis and Kornikova. And we would go to Bogota, Colombia. We would go to Costa Rica. We went to Venezuela, of all places. So I was basically playing on an exos with the Jim Courier. I guess it's called the Champions Tour. I don't know if he's changed the name now, but that was keeping me busy for a few years. We would even go to the Cayman Islands. And then that kind of dwindled. My kids got older, which meant I was needed even more, I guess. And then my kids started getting into, organized sports. And basically, I then had no time anywhere in my life for another life outside of my kids because they just keep me busy. My daughter was playing tennis tournaments on the weekend. My son's playing State Cup, soccer, basketball tournaments at the Mamba Center here in Los Angeles. So, barely any time to sit down, quite honestly. But still kind of in the game, still playing a little tennis, just, definitely not like I was right after I left the tour.
Yeah. Do you follow professional tennis much these days? Do you watch any women's or men's matches when professional tennis is happening, or have you kind of moved on and sounds like you're really busy with other things, so totally understandable if you don't get the chance.
There was a moment, I think about 3 years ago where I wasn't watching any tennis at all. But every time I would watch it, it would be like, oh my God, these girls that I was playing against back in the day are still playing.
Right.
And I would be so shocked. But now it seems like we've made that turnover and there's like a lot of new players in the picture. So I have to say I keep up with tennis around the quarters or semifinals of Grand Slams. I don't keep up with any of the, side tournaments, the tournaments in between the Grand Slams. I used to, get up and, get the paper USA Today and turn it to the back of the, like sports results section. And I'd look at all the scores and all that. But certainly my life has changed since then. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of a busy sport mom.
I'm becoming a busy sport dad, and it's only going to get busier for me, I think, as my kids grow up. But
it does.
But you enjoy
yeah.
that, right? Like, it's funny. I never thought I would have enjoyed putting my own interests and activities aside as much as I do now. I would way rather watch my son play hockey or my kids play soccer or whatever the sport may be than heading out and doing it myself, actually.
I know. I remember like traveling around the world and I'd sit next to someone on the airplane and they'd be like, oh, I have 2 kids. Let me show you a picture of my kids. And I'd just be like, okay. and now I'm that person. I'm like, oh, I've got 2 kids. Let me just show you how she hits the tennis ball. Just hold on one second.
Same here.
So I've become that mom, but they are my life. And I always felt like I would be a young mom. I always wanted to be a young mom. That was something going into the whole, tennis lifestyle, and having that life on tour, which is basically traveling between 27 and 32 weeks a year. I always knew one day when this is over, I'm going to settle down, I'm going to have a family, and I'm not going to travel as much, and I would always kind of look forward to that.
Is that what you miss the least then, is the travel and the hectic schedule that goes along with it?
That is absolutely what I miss the least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I really, first of all, I get very, very anxious on airplanes. I passed out on a couple of airplanes because of turbulence one time. If you ask my husband now, even when we do travel, and we don't travel that often, but when we do and there's turbulence, I just can't relax at all. So that is something that always took a toll on me. Because, I went to Paraguay with the United States Tennis Association, all expenses paid for a couple junior tennis tournaments. And I did that I just turned 12 years old. So I had been doing that I had been traveling around for a while and never really enjoyed flying, sadly. If I would have enjoyed flying, the tour would have been no problem for me.
Might have kept you around longer, is that right?
Huh?
Might have kept you around longer?
The money?
No, if you had been more comfortable with the flying.
Oh, if I could have been more comfortable with the flying, I think I just could have relaxed and I feel like I could have enjoyed it a bit more, because it was just always a lingering stress.
What do you miss the most then? Is it the competition? Is it the camaraderie? What's the biggest thing you miss from being a pro tennis player?
I have to say, someone asked me this question. Actually, I had to write an interview earlier today. And the biggest thing that I miss is probably the high that you get from a great win or excited about a big tournament coming up. I would say just that sort of initial great high that comes along with success and accomplishing something, and having that top 10, top 20 win.
You had some big wins during your career. Names that come to mind are players like Marion Bartoli and Daenerys Safina, Hantikova, I believe, as well, a couple of times. Which moment or win gave you the greatest sort of exhilarating feeling, I guess, as you describe it, the highest high of your career?
Like I had played all those girls. I remember I did have some pretty good wins. I thoroughly enjoyed defeating Francesca Schiavone, right after she won the French Open. I defeated her in Sertogenbosch. It was on grass, which wasn't her best surface, but also wasn't my best surface either. And we had a duel. We had a real great match. And that was kind of fun to defeat her, because sometimes I'd have problems with girls with slice backhands. So that was a great win for me. I remember, I always will remember when I defeated Lisicki, when I played for the U.S. Fed Cup team. I remember I was third on the list to play on the team, and then Serena dropped out. So then here I popped in as the singles player because I was next in line. So it was Davenport and myself, and we played against Germany in San Diego. And it was my very first Fed Cup. And I remember Davenport went out to play this new girl, Lisicki, right? And she lost, like straight sets, I think. And I was like, oh crap.
Now you gotta
like,
try that
I was
yourself.
expecting you to take us home. Like, you're Davenport, you know? And so then I went out right after she lost to Lisicki. And I can't remember the girl I played against, but at the time Germany they only had Lisicki, and then the next girl in line, I cannot remember her name, sadly, but she was ranked, I want to say, like 160 in the world. And so I beat her pretty easily, like something like 2-3 or 3-2. And then the next day I had to come out and play Lisicki. And I was like, well, if she beat Davenport, then I'm not going to have a chance with her.
And that big serve, right? That huge serve.
Right. Big serve, just huge ground strokes. And I remember Zina Garrison was the coach, and she was like, look, you can beat this girl. Lindsay played terrible yesterday. I think you can beat this girl. And I was like, I looked at her and I was like, really? And she's like, I wouldn't tell you that if I didn't believe it. So I went out and beat her in straight sets. And the one thing that Zina told me was, anytime you get a short ball, come to the net. Because I actually had some really good results in doubles. I think I won a WTA or finaled at a couple WTA events, and then quarterfinals of 3 different Grand Slams in doubles. And I really didn't take it too seriously, quite honestly. But I was pretty good at it. And I actually had a lot of fun playing doubles. And I think every time I played doubles, I feel like it always improved my singles game, because I just became more and more comfortable at the net. So I remember when I was playing against Lisicki, Zina Garrison said, anytime you get a short ball, I want you to hit it and come to the net. I do not want to see you hitting it and backing up. Hit it, come to the net, follow it in, hit the, drop volley. Hit the drop volley. She cannot get up to the drop volleys. And I did it like so many times, and I beat her straight sets. And I remember, I had the American flag in my hand, and I was running around the court. So that was a big high for me. That was a really big high.
Like movie moments.
Right. I was actually supposed to go to Moscow after the NASDAQ, but then I had my ovary situation, and I had to pull out of it, sadly. But after that match against Lisicki, it was right before Indian Wells in Miami. We played Fed Cup, I guess, right after the Australian Open. And I remember after being Lisicki, and after kind of having that big confidence boost that the Davis Cup, that the Fed Cup match gave me, I remember going on to Indian Wells and, beating Safina, beating Safarova. I lost to Radwanska like 7-5 in the third. I was up 4-1 in the third, but I was really starting to know my game. Went on to the NASDAQ, beat Rosano, who was really tough to beat. So I definitely started finding my groove there, and had some cool wins. Yeah, for sure. But I think it was Lisicki and Schiavone. Obviously the Honchakova win was always great, but I kind of always had Honchakova's number, because she was a big hitter, big player, but a little inconsistent. And I was more consistent, and I could run down all of her balls. So I don't think she really loved playing me, nor did Safina.
I enjoyed going through your WTA page this afternoon, just prepping to speak with you and reminiscing and sort of reliving a lot of those big victories you had. mean, it's amazing it's been
Yeah,
10 years to me since you've retired. It doesn't seem that long.
I know.
2008 seemed to be, if we go back, 2008 seemed to be a year that you were making some steady gains. Your ranking was approaching the top 50 or so, I believe. And then
Mhm.
2009, obviously, becoming a mom and being pregnant. And then you tried to
Mhm.
come back, or you played a few matches in 2010, but I think only three matches. And then
Yep.
that was it. So what was it when you came back that season that you decided to call it a career after those few matches?
I just felt like I had been doing it for such a long time. And, when I got pregnant, this was after I had the accident with my ovary. Um, and the reason why I had that was because I was on birth control, of course, and sometimes birth control can cause like polycystic ovaries is what they call it, where blood fills in a massive cyst and it just got really big. And anyway, after that whole experience, I just said to myself, I'm going to take it easy. I've been doing this since I was 12 years old. I started making money at this sport at 14 years old. I don't even know who I am without this sport. I don't even know what other interests that I like. I've just been groomed to train and be this professional tennis player and try and be successful for myself, but also for my family and my agents and my contracts and all that. And I remember when I got pregnant, I was so relaxed and so chill for the most part and just really enjoyed all that time off. I did freeze my ranking because the WTA allows you to freeze your ranking for 2 years, I think it is. If you get pregnant, they treat pregnancy like an injury. And when I came back, first of all, my son was a terrible traveler. Second of all, on the WTA tour at that time in 2009, honestly, the fad was to have a baby and come back. That was like the new it thing to do.
But
Davenport was
before
doing it.
Serena did it, it was you made it cool. Was that it?
Yeah, I mean, Davenport was doing it. Kleisters was doing it. Sybil Bammer had a kid on tour. I mean, the Bondarenko sisters were now starting to do it. And it was just like, okay, let's have a baby. Let's come back. It's as simple as that. But the only person that could really do it well was Kleisters and Davenport. And the reason why is because they had a full-blown entourage team/nannies traveling with them. And I didn't take all of that into consideration. So after about three different jolts to Cincinnati, I think we went to, and then we went to Los Gatos and we went somewhere else. It was just, he wasn't sleeping in the middle of the night. We were traveling too much. And I just said, you know what, let's call it a day. And thankfully, I guess I could do that because at this point now, I have other interests outside of tennis and investments and things. So I guess I didn't have to rely fully on, getting paid by the WTA or prize money or whatever it is. Because that transition can be hard when you are transitioning out of a big sport where, this has been your lifeline for so long. And then now what? Now what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
So
It's probably helpful to have a child or two at that point to be able to sort of occupy you and help that transition in
right.
some ways.
I mean, I always say it's easier for the girls to make the transition than the men. The men have to like figure out what to do next to support a family. The women can just be like, well, I'm having a baby. It's all good. But yeah, we got into real estate, me and my husband and my dad even, and hard money loans and little things like that. So that keeps me busy.
What was it like earlier in your career? You achieved your career high ranking of 39 on the WTA at such a young age. You were only 18 years old. What kind of pressure did that bring with it? Did you think it would be, I don't want to say easy, but did you expect that you'd be able to maintain and improve from that steadily from there? Or was it a bit too much for such a young age to have that shot up into the top 40 of the sport?
I mean, looking back, I signed a contract with CAA, and I just turned 15. So I signed a contract with, at the time they were the William Morris Agency, signed with Jill Smoller, who was Serena's agent. And then, and it was kind of like this child prodigy, I guess I would say. I mean, I was already ranked number 1 in the nation in the 18s when I was just about to be 15, then went on to be number 2 in the world juniors. finals of the French Open juniors and, all that. So the expectations were always really high. And I was kind of supposed to make it big time. That's kind of how I always felt. I always felt like I was never doing enough. I was never good enough. I wasn't pleasing the sponsors or the agents or my parents or whatever. It's kind of a sad story in a way, and I don't mean for it to be sad, but it's all worked out great. It's just, I guess I just put a lot of pressure on myself because I felt like a lot was expected of me.
Feeling that kind of pressure yourself from such a young age and being married to a former tennis player as well, would you and Chuck want your kids to ever follow the route, whether it be tennis or another sport, of trying to be professional athletes like their parents?
I mean, I go back and forth. Like today, for instance, my daughter and I were at tennis practice, and boy, was she hitting the ball well. And she's lefty, and she's going to be tall, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, she's so good. And then people ask me, do you want her to be a professional? And I'm like, honestly, no, I don't. I'm not going to push her in that way because I really feel like the best players, the ones that come out fully on top, really want it for themselves and they don't play for others,
Mm-hmm.
And I know that firsthand, because, for me, looking back at my career, I feel like I didn't make it really. And I feel like, I feel like I did the best I could, and I didn't, for me, I didn't handle the downs I didn't handle the ups and downs as well as I feel like I should have. And what I mean by that is I feel like the great players handle the ups and downs the same. They're just even kill. They're just even. They don't get too high with a great win, and they don't get too low with a bad loss. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that was my problem. I really struggled with the highs. So, would I want my kids to go, would I want my kids to travel around the world and live that lifestyle? Only if they want to.
Yeah, fair
Only if they
enough.
want to.
Well
Yeah.
said. It's funny as you're saying that and talking about highs and lows. Here I am, never coming close to being professional at anything, and just thinking of my day-to-day parenting, and I'm like, yeah, that's how I feel right now, is the highs and the lows, and just trying to find that middle ground day to day. It's
Yeah.
just like a lesson in life, even.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I tell my daughter that too, like, try not to be so emotional over everything. Like, sometimes when you show your emotions, it shows weakness, but I want her to be outgoing and tell me how she feels. But there's just that fine line where sometimes when you're a professional athlete, you really also have to be such a great actress or actor and not show your true feelings outside.
Yeah. It's funny you should say that because I wanted to ask you, and this is a perfect segue, about the time that you did show some emotion on the court when you flipped off the photographer at Wimbledon,
Oh,
who was getting kind of fresh with you courtside as he was snapping pictures. And I'm just wondering, today it seems like so many athletes are trying to hold back the emotion, and just keep things so much in check, to the point where I think tennis fans would love to see a little bit more personality and whatnot. What's your take on that, and how did you balance that while you were playing? Obviously, a moment like that is sort of a one that stands out and isn't a regular thing, but how did you
Yeah, well,
juggle
that
that?
was really a very just quick moment. You know, uh, that in particular, because the UK press can be so, they can just be a little crude, I guess, at times, and they were back then, especially with the girls. That morning, I woke up to my booty on the front cover of the sports magazine. And look, I would have been okay with that. I'm not modest. But it wasn't a good picture.
That was your
It
big
looked like
complaint, eh?
cellulite. It didn't look good. And I was really upset about that. So that was then leading me on. And then later that day, of course, I had to play Sharapova. So I'm already feeling like a little embarrassed at the time because I was super young. So yeah, I just looked at him and he said something inappropriate, and I just looked at him and I just flipped him off. And, that wasn't really my personality. My personality was pretty shy and reserved over the years, my younger years of my life, especially in school. The teachers would say, she never gets in trouble. She never talks in class. So me really coming out of my shell, that was probably an important moment there where I was just like, flipped them off. And then I just kind of started to build this shield, around me, this armor, I guess, if you will. And I just started, I built this sort of tough girl mentality over the years, and also just this, free spirit, I'm confident with my body, with who I am. I just sort of like started to build confidence, I guess, as a whole, if you will, but definitely coming out and being strong and really like using my voice or my emotions. It won me a lot of matches, even against Schiavone, like, in Sertogenbosch. I remember her and I were having a battle. Deuce, I remember like 5-all deuce. I won that point and screamed out like, come on. And like, that can be intimidating when you really buck up. So, the tour will do that. It'll build strength in a girl. So when I flipped that guy off, it was at the very beginning of my career. And that was just the start of me building this strength and this brave, armor that I had, I guess, around me there towards the end.
As you look back at some of your career memories, I'm wondering, because we're a Canadian podcast, do you have any good memories or stories or anything that you can remember from your career from up here playing in Canada?
I loved playing in Quebec. I never did great there.
Well, you made a doubles final there, did you not?
Did I? See, the doubles is like whatever to me. Like, I'm always just like, oh, okay, the doubles, great.
I want to say 2005 in Quebec.
Yeah, I would be in the worst mood. And I remember Bethany being like, why are you in such a bad mood? You're in the finals of doubles. And I'm like, doubles? Come on. I wanted to be a great singles player. Right. That was my thing. But yes, I did have now I remember, I did have a great tournament there in doubles. Singles, God, I lost to a Canadian girl there, actually.
You played a bunch of Canadian women, actually, as I was scrolling through, and I wasn't sure what to feel as I'm going through the wins you had, the losses, who am I? But, obviously playing a Canadian tournament, you probably get a few more wild cards and Canadian qualifiers in there.
Oh, and then the girls from Canada, they played so well in their own country. It was like you'd see these girls at a $50,000 challenger, a $75,000 challenger, and they win a round or two, and then suddenly you're playing in Quebec City, and you're, and the crowd's behind them, and they're like a whole new player. That's what I remember about Canada.
Did you? Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's pretty much it. I remember I loved the food there. I felt like Quebec City was so cozy because it was right before Christmas and they all had their Christmas lights up. So I always loved going there.
Yeah, it's a great spot. Did you catch, I'm assuming, but maybe not, the match at the US Open last summer between Serena and our very own new Grand Slam champion, Bianca Andreescu?
Yes, I saw a little bits and pieces of it. We're Osaka fans over here, or at least my daughter is. So once Osaka was out, we didn't really, we kept up with the men's, but not really the women's final. But yeah, I always feel like I'm going to say her name wrong. Can you say it one more time?
No, you go ahead and try it.
Andreescu? How do you say it?
Yeah, that's pretty good. Bianca Andreescu.
Andreescu.
You know what, I got to be honest with you. I'm terrible with names, and we talk about Bianca all the time on the podcast. I think I even flip-flop sometimes in terms of how I pronounce it, so don't feel bad.
Well, I'm from Georgia, which is like the southern part of the United States of America, and we talk different there anyway. So when I'm saying like Schiavone, like I know I'm saying that wrong. I've known Schiavone my whole life, but it's like I know I'm saying it wrong, but that's just the way I say it.
I won't ask you to pronounce the other two Canadian last names, Dennis and Felix, because those would really be probably a mouthful.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Now, Now, is Andreescu, is she like originally a Canadian, or
Yep.
is she coming
Yeah,
from
she was
somewhere else?
born in Canada. Her parents were from
Okay.
Romania. She went back
Okay.
there between the ages of like 7 and 9, but for the most part, she grew up here in Canada. So she's homegrown talent for us.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, y'all did a great job with her because boy, can she bust the ball.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And we've been waiting a long time to have a Grand Slam singles champion in tennis.
I
So
know y'all have. Yeah, I know. Congratulations.
thank you. Well, look, Ashley, thank you so much for taking time out of your hectic schedule with the kids and the dogs and everything there at home. Anyone who'd like to follow you on Instagram, you're at Ashley Harkleroad there. And
Yep.
we really
Good
appreciate you
job. You
stopping
pronounced my
by.
name correctly.
Yeah, I almost
That's not
messed it up
easy.
there too, but long day of talking to the kids. So I'm amazed I even
Yeah.
have a voice. But thanks for stopping by. We'd love to chat with you again in the future and sharing some of your
Thanks for
stories
having
about
me.
life on tour. So you guys take care and stay safe,
You
and we'll
too,
talk again down the road.
for sure.
All
Thanks.
right.